Ladies and gentlemen, gather round the glow of this here campfire and let the prairie winds carry your imagination back to a time when the sun burned low over the jagged mesas, when justice rode on horseback and secrets traveled quieter than a rattlesnake in dry grass. Tonight, I bring you a tale carved straight from the Wild West itself, a tale of dust-covered boots, whispered truths, and a question that could stop even the toughest cowboy in his tracks. "Cowboy, do you desire me like the others?" asked the Apache widow as he stepped closer. What followed was more than just a meeting of two wandering souls. It was a clash of cultures, a test of honor, and a spark that could set the whole frontier ablaze. So sit back, tip your hats, and let this story ride straight into your hearts like a bullet from a silver-plated six-shooter. As the sun dipped low behind the jagged ridges, painting the sky in shades of ember and gold, the cowboy found himself riding through a stretch of land he rarely crossed. This wasn't a place where strangers lingered. The wind carried too many stories, and the silence felt like it belonged to someone else. His horse halted on its own, ears pricked forward, sensing what he hadn't yet noticed. There, standing near a cluster of yucca plants, was a figure draped in a woven shawl, her dark hair braided with quiet dignity. She wasn't startled by his presence. In fact, she watched him with a calmness that unsettled him more than a gun pointed at his chest ever could. He dismounted slowly, not wanting to spook her, though he sensed she was not easily frightened. There was something in her posture, steady, resolute, almost carved from the land itself. She was an Apache widow, a woman whose grief had shaped her into a survivor, someone who knew the language of hardship far better than most men on the frontier. The cowboy had heard whispers about her from passing travelers, how she lived alone, how she walked the edge of two worlds that often failed to understand each other, and how a quiet strength surrounded her like an invisible shield. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the vast desert seemed to pause, as if waiting for whatever would come next. He had not expected to meet anyone here, much less a woman whose presence felt both haunting and powerful. She took a step forward, not threatening, merely curious, as though she were studying the reasons behind his wandering. The fading light caught the subtle lines of sorrow etched into her expression, but there was also resilience, an enduring fire that refused to be extinguished. The cowboy felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't name, but couldn't ignore either. He wasn't sure if it was the solemn beauty of the moment or the silent invitation in her gaze, but he knew this encounter wasn't by chance. Fate, or whatever force guided the lonely and the lost across these plains, had intertwined their paths. And in the stillness of that desert dusk, he realized he was standing at the threshold of a story he hadn't planned to be part of. One that would test him, change him, and pull him deeper into the heart of the Wild West than he had ever ridden before. The moment she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths, cutting through the stillness like a blade of moonlight. "Cowboy, do you desire me like the others?" Her words weren't flirtatious, nor were they wrapped in softness. They were sharp, deliberate, the kind that made a man stop, reevaluate his stance, and question every intention he carried. The cowboy had faced outlaws, storms, and nights darker than coal, yet nothing had ever disarmed him the way that single question did. It wasn't the words themselves, but the sorrow and suspicion buried beneath them. Sorrow carved from betrayal, suspicion shaped by too many men who had looked at her with hunger rather than respect. He took a breath, steadying himself as he studied her expression. She wasn't challenging him for sport, She was testing him, probing to see if he belonged to the same breed as those who had come before. Men who wandered into her life, offering false promises. Men who saw her vulnerability as a doorway instead of a boundary. He could see in her eyes that each of those encounters had cost her something: trust, safety, peace. And so the question wasn't about desire, it was about truth, about honor. He stepped closer, not to close the space between them, but to make sure she could see his face clearly in the last sliver of daylight. The cowboy had never been a man of many words, but in that moment, silence felt like an insult. He sensed she wasn't asking for pretty phrases. She wanted clarity, something real, and in a land where lies traveled faster than bullets, truth mattered more than gold. The wind shifted, lifting the edge of her shawl, revealing the faint scars on her arm, marks of a life that had forced her to be stronger than most. The cowboy felt something stir within him, a mixture of admiration and protective instinct he didn't fully understand yet. He knew better than to touch her, better than to make promises he wasn't ready to uphold. Instead, he met her gaze, letting his sincerity speak before any words could. In those few suspended seconds, the tension between them thickened. Not the kind born of desire, but of two people trying to understand each other across the vast gulf of culture, loss, and mistrust. Her question lingered in the air, a test of character, and he realized that whatever he said or did next would determine whether their paths would part forever or merge into something far more complicated and meaningful. The air between them tightened like a drawn bowstring, charged with emotions neither of them dared to name. What stood between the cowboy and the Apache widow wasn't just a conversation. It was a collision of two worlds shaped by different laws, wounds, and expectations. He could feel the weight of her question pressing against him, forcing him to confront not only what he felt, but also what was expected of a man in his boots. Desire was easy in the Wild West. Respect was rare. And the line between the two was often blurred by dust, loneliness, and unspoken longing. The cowboy had learned early in life that the frontier judged a man by the choices he made when no one was watching. Here, beneath the fading twilight, he knew he was being watched by eyes that had seen too much pain to tolerate another false promise. The widow's stance was guarded, not because she feared him, but because she had learned to fear the intentions of those who approached her without understanding the storms she carried. Her people had their own ways, their own traditions, and their own reasons to distrust outsiders. He understood that. Yet the way she held herself, strong, unyielding, made him want to tread carefully, like approaching a wild Mustang that had been broken one too many times. A part of him did feel drawn to her, but not in the way she feared. Her courage, her silence, the fire that flickered in her eyes whenever she challenged him, all of it awakened something he hadn't expected. But he knew that admitting this, or acting on it, without earning her trust, would only cast him among the men she despised. So he held himself still, careful not to let desire overpower the respect she deserved. He didn't want to be another shadow from her past. He wanted to understand the truth of her pain and the strength beneath it. She watched him closely, searching for any flicker of dishonesty. The winds whispered across the prairie, lifting strands of her hair and carrying the scent of the earth around them. It was a moment thick with unspoken questions, questions of honor, of boundaries, of whether two people from opposite worlds could find common ground without losing themselves. In that suspended silence, he realized that trust wasn't given here. It had to be carved out slowly, with patience and authenticity. And if he was to walk any further down this path with her, he would need to prove that his intentions rose far above the kind of desire that had burned and betrayed her before. Her question did not come from curiosity alone. It was rooted in a history marked by wounds that had never fully healed. The cowboy could sense it, even before she revealed anything of her past. There was a heaviness in the way she held her shoulders, a cautiousness in her gaze that spoke of years spent surviving the worst parts of both worlds. The loss of her husband, the pressures from those who sought to claim her, and the relentless struggle of living as an Apache widow in a land where people rarely honored boundaries. Men, settlers and drifters alike, had approached her with sweetened words and shallow intentions, mistaking her solitude for availability. They saw her beauty, her quiet strength, and believed they were entitled to it simply because they arrived with confidence than a story of their own loneliness. But each encounter had left her more guarded. Some men sought her out with fascination, others with conquest in their hearts. A few came with gifts she never asked for, insisting she needed their protection. Others whispered promises of a new life if she agreed to leave behind the memories of her people. She had learned quickly that desire without respect was nothing but a trap, a snare disguised as affection. And in the harsh world of the frontier, where alliances shifted as easily as the desert winds, a woman without a husband was seen as vulnerable prey. The widow had endured this long enough to recognize the signs, and she hated that she had to. Each time a man approached her with the same hungry eyes, she felt the echoes of her past claw their way back. Her husband had died a warrior, defending their land, and his absence had carved a hollow in her life that no one had the right to fill without honor. Those who tried to tempt her with empty desire only reminded her of the world's cruelty, of the loneliness that came from belonging nowhere after the loss of everything she once knew. The cowboy sensed that behind her confidence was a woman who had learned to fight in silence, who had learned that survival was easier when no one was close enough to wound her again. So when she asked him if he desired her like the others, it wasn't merely a question. It was a shield lifted in self-defense, a test forged in fire. She needed to know whether he was another man ready to take advantage of the cracks left in her soul, or someone capable of seeing the depth beneath her scars. Her past had taught her that trusting too easily could cost her everything. And now, standing before a stranger with honest eyes, she waited to see if he would answer with truth, or become one more regret carved into her memory. The cowboy knew that words alone would never be enough to reach her. Not after everything she had endured. Not after the hollow promises and deceptive kindness that had trailed her since the day she lost her husband. If he wanted her to believe in his sincerity, he would need to let his actions speak louder than anything he could say. So instead of rushing to defend himself or offer comforting assurances, he chose a quieter path. He kept a respectful distance, making sure she understood that he would approach only if she allowed it. He lowered his hands, showing he carried no expectations, no demands, and certainly no claim over her life. In a world where men so often took without asking, the simple act of restraint became a powerful declaration. Over the next few moments, he showed his intentions through attentiveness. He didn't circle around her with curiosity or pity. He didn't let his gaze linger in places that would make her feel exposed. Instead, he studied the terrain, the shifting sky, and the trail behind them, signaling that he was aware of her safety and surroundings, without making it seem like she needed him to protect her. His presence remained steady, but never invasive. That small, quiet respect began to crack the thick wall of suspicion between them. He spoke only when necessary, choosing his words with care. "I won't take a step toward you unless you want me to," he said, his voice low but firm. It wasn't a plea, it was a promise, a vow carved out of honesty rather than desire. She watched him, weighing every gesture, every pause. She noticed how he made no attempt to close the space between them, even though the fading light made her figure appear almost ethereal. He didn't act like a man trying to win affection. He behaved like someone who understood the weight of boundaries and respected them fully. He offered her small signs of his character. When the wind picked up, he turned slightly so the dust wouldn't blow in her eyes. When he noticed she carried supplies that looked heavy, he didn't rush in to insist on helping. He simply asked, giving her the choice. And when she spoke, he listened. Not as a man waiting for an opening to impress her, but as someone who genuinely valued her voice. These simple actions, quiet yet deliberate, carried more meaning than flattery ever could. They showed her that he was not like the others who had approached her with hunger disguised as interest. He was proving, moment by moment, that he would not rush, not push, and not take anything she did not freely offer. In that careful patience, she began to see a truth she hadn't expected. This cowboy might not desire her like the others. He might, in fact, be someone willing to earn his place, step by step, choice by choice, without demanding more than she was willing to give. As the last traces of sunlight melted into the horizon and the desert sky turned a deep indigo, something subtle yet undeniable shifted between them. It wasn't a sudden spark or a dramatic confession. It was the quiet realization that their paths, once strangers to each other, were slowly beginning to align. The cowboy stood steady, allowing the silence to settle naturally. And in that stillness, the widow felt something she hadn't felt in a long while. Peace. Not the fragile kind that disappeared with the next hardship, but a grounded calm that came from sensing true, unwavering sincerity. She observed him closely, the way he carried himself, not with the swagger of a man seeking conquest, but with the careful steps of someone who knew the value of patience. His presence held warmth without pressure, strength without dominance. For a woman who had been approached by men who saw her either as a prize or a burden, this was a rarity. And though her instincts urged her to remain guarded, the loneliness she had buried deep for years trembled at the edges, curious about the possibility he represented. The cowboy didn't try to fill the silence. Instead, he let it become a bridge rather than a barrier. He watched her with respect, not hunger, and when she finally met his gaze again, she saw no shadow of deceit, only a steady, genuine light. In that gaze, she sensed a man willing to walk beside her, not ahead of her or behind her. A man who understood that trust was earned slowly, like coaxing a wild horse that had known too many harsh hands. The night grew cooler, and as she pulled her shawl tighter, he quietly removed his coat. But instead of placing it on her shoulders without permission, he simply held it out, offering her the choice. That small gesture, so simple yet profound, broke something open in her heart. It told her everything his words hadn't said, that he would never force, never assume, never take without being given. She accepted the coat, not because she needed it, but because she understood what it symbolized. In that moment, the distance between them softened, not through passion, but through mutual recognition. Two souls, shaped by hardship, standing at the edge of something neither had expected. Their fates intertwined, not through grand declarations or impulsive desire, but through a shared breath in the desert night. A silent agreement that whatever came next would be built on respect, truth, and the slow, steady trust that might one day grow into something stronger than either of them had imagined. And in that quiet, fragile beginning, the Wild West seemed to shift around them, as if holding its breath for the story that was just starting to unfold. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as the desert night wrapped itself around those two souls, their story became more than a simple encounter on a lonely stretch of frontier. It became a testament to what truly endures in a world shaped by hardship, loss, and unforgiving landscapes. The cowboy's journey toward the Apache widow was never about desire. It was about honor, patience, and the courage to stand before someone wounded by the past without trying to claim or conquer them. And for her, it was about learning that not every man who approached carried hidden intentions, that sometimes a stranger could bring with him a gentleness she had long forgotten. Their meeting reminds us that trust is not found in rushed promises or shallow words, but in actions, quiet, consistent, and sincere. It shows that respect can bridge even the widest of cultural divides, and that healing often begins in the stillness, when two people choose to listen rather than assume, to pause rather than push, to understand rather than judge. In the harsh world of the Wild West, where so much could be taken from you in a heartbeat, the rarest treasure of all was not gold, land, or power. It was a connection built on truth. So let this tale linger in your minds as the embers of the campfire fade. Let it remind you that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged not through passion or force, but through patience and sincerity. And that even in the roughest corners of life, there is always room for respect, healing, and the possibility of something deeper. Their story is not one of conquest, it is one of quiet transformation. A reminder that even the loneliest hearts can find a path toward trust when met with understanding. And as the cowboy and the Apache widow took their first steps into whatever future awaited them, the Wild West watched silently, knowing that something rare had begun, something as enduring as the land itself. Thank you